if I told you that one of the most influential sounds in modern history came from a handful of small towns most Americans have never visited? Not in New York, Los Angeles, or even in Nashville, but places like Clarksdale and Greenwood, tiny towns scattered across the Mississippi Delta. Places that rarely make headlines, places where life was often hard, and yet somehow the music born there would eventually circle the entire globe. But the big question is, how did that happen? Last week we started our journey in Appalachia. We looked at how isolation helped preserve some of America's oldest musical traditions. But eventually, those sounds left the mountains. And as America's story continued to unfold, another region began shaping the soundtrack of the nation, the Mississippi Delta. I've never lived in the Delta, but the more I study the history of American music, the more I keep finding myself pulled back to the same question. How did some of America's hardest places create one of the world's most influential sounds? The Delta is a place shaped by a river. For generations, people went there looking for opportunity. Rich farmland promised prosperity, but for many families, life remained difficult. Long hours, physical labor, economic uncertainty. Yet time and time again throughout history, hardship has often produced extraordinary creativity. The story of the blues isn't really about music, it's about people. And once you understand the people, the music starts to make sense. Before there were blues records, before there were radio broadcasts, there were communities. People trying to make sense of life. And music, it became part of that process. Songs help people tell stories and remember experiences. Express sorrow, celebrate joy, hold on to hope. The music wasn't created for an audience, but it was created because people needed it. I guess you could say that the blues wasn't manufactured, but it was something that emerged. It emerged slowly and naturally from everyday life. But if the blues was born from everyday life, why did it come from, of all places, here in the Mississippi Delta? Why not somewhere else? The answer has to do everything with the Delta itself. The Delta became a crossroads, not just geographically, but culturally. People arrived from different places, different backgrounds, different traditions, and when cultures meet, new things often emerge. The Delta became a place where stories mixed, and eventually, musical traditions mixed as well. The result was something that was entirely new, a sound that was deeply personal and emotional, and yes, unmistakably American. And that's what makes the Delta so fascinating. The music wasn't created by one famous person or even one famous town, but it was created by thousands and thousands of ordinary people, many of whom we will never even know. But their influence, their influence is still with us today. Eventually the music began to travel. Railroads connected towns, new technology connected audience, and sounds that had once belonged to the local communities suddenly reached millions. And as it traveled, it evolved, influencing country music, rock and roll, soul music, rhythm and blues, even music we still listen to today. But here's what's remarkable. The influence became global. The places, they remained local. Many of the towns that helped shape this story, they're still small towns, and they're still connected to the same roads, the same fields, and the same communities. And maybe that's the biggest lesson in this entire story. Influence doesn't always come from famous places. Sometimes it comes from places that most people overlook. The Delta reminds us that history isn't only made in capitals and skyscrapers and big cities. Sometimes it's made in small local communities that never really expected the world to notice. The people who created these sounds, they weren't trying to change history. They were simply living their lives, working and raising families, building communities. And through those ordinary lives, they created something extraordinary. And that's the story that we keep finding all across this country. Ordinary places, extraordinary legacies. While the mountains preserved music, the Delta transformed it. But our story isn't finished yet, because before radio connected America, before records filled store shelves, America had already discovered another way to spread music. One living room at a time, one piano at a time, one piece of sheet music at a time. And in our next episode, we'll explore a forgotten chapter of American music history, a time when families gathered around the piano after supper, when songs traveled from town to town through sheet music. Until then, I hope y'all have a great day, and I'll be talking with you again soon. Bye, y'all.